Govindam Haripurusham Tamaham Bhajami. Yeah, that's good. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hari Gopi Janava Nava Giri Bharadhari Gopi Janaballabha Giribharadhari Yashodhanandana Bhaja Janaranjana Yashoda Yashodhanandana Bhaja Janaranjana Yamunatira Banachari Jamuna Tira Banachari Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jai Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Gopi Janaballabha Giribharadhari Jaya Gopi Janaballabha Giribharadhari Janaballabha Yashodhanandana Bhaja Janaranjana Yashodhanandana Bhaja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Banachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Radha Madhava Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Sisi Radha Madhava ki jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai Nitai Garupamanandi Om Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Ma Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're reading from the 9th canto, chapter 10, text 13. The pastimes of Lord Rama Chandra. Yadrosha Vibrama Vivritta Katakshapatha Vibrama Vivritta Katakshapatha Sambranta Nakra Makaro Bhayagyana Goshaha Makaro Bhayagyana Gosha Sindhu Shirasya Ahanam Parigrigyarupi Asya Ahanam Parigrigyarupi Padharavindam Upagam Yabhabasha Etat Padharavindam Upagam Yabhabhasha etat Padharavindam upagam Yabhabhasha etat Padharavindam upagam Yabhabhasha etat. See, this is how conditioning works. We're conditioned to, because of the verses before, the note goes up. So we sing the last verse the way we sang the other verses, but the meter, it doesn't go up. But right? It stays the same. But naturally we go up. So that's how conditioning works. You know what to do, but you're habituated to do it differently. It's like subconsciously. Yeah, I should do it this way, and then you do it the way you're used to doing it. Right? Let's try it again. Second chance. Yarosha viprama vivritta katakshapata Vivritta katakshapata Sambranta nakramakarom bhayagirna goshaha Makaro vayugirna gosha Sindhu sirasahana Sindhu shirasya hanam parigriya rupi Sindhu sirarama Padharavindam upagamya babasha etat. Padharavindam upagamya bibasha etat. Want to try to chant? Somebody? Yarosha vipama vivritta katakshapata Sambranta nakramakaro bhayagirna goshaha Sindhu shirasha Asharana Silasyaharana Padharavindam upagam yabhivasha etat. Next. Yarosha vipama vivritti katakshak bashpata Sambranta nakramakaro bhayogena goshaha Sindhu sirasyarhanam parigrinya rupi Padaravindam Padaravinda upagam yabhivasha etat. We heard the other day that if you chant Sanskrit, it reconnects neural connections in the brain. Just as an interesting side point. Okay, so we'll do the word meanings. Yat rosha, whose anger, vibhrama, induced by, vibrita, turned, katakshapata, by the glance, sambranta, agitated, nakra, crocodiles, makara, and sharks, bhayagirna goshaha, whose loud sound was silenced through fear. Sindhu, the ocean. Shirashi, on his head. Arhanam, all paraphernalia for worshipping. Worshipping the Lord. Yeah. Parigriya, carrying, rupi, taking form, pada aravindam, the lotus feet of the Lord, upagamya, reaching, babhasa, said, etat, the following. After reaching the beach, Lord Ramchandra fasted for 3 days, awaiting the arrival of the ocean personified. When the ocean did not come, the Lord exhibited his pastimes of anger, and simply by his glancing over the ocean, all the living entities within it, including the crocodiles and sharks, were agitated by fear. Then the personified ocean fearfully approached Lord Ramachandra, taking all paraphernalia to worship him. Falling at the Lord's lotus feet, the personified ocean spoke as follows. It's kind of similar to the Jamuna pastime when Lord Balaram was calling Jamuna and she wasn't coming. So Lord Ramachandra's anger was so hot it heated up the ocean and agitated the ocean. So this is text number 14. All right, I'll read the Sanskrit. Natvam bhayam jara divyana vikama bhumam kutostamari purusham jagatam adisham yat satvata suraganna rajasa prajesha manyoscha bhuta pataya sabhavangan guneshaha. O all-pervading Supreme Personality of Godhead, we are dull-minded and did not understand who you are. But now we understand that you are the Supreme Person, the Master of the entire universe, the unchanging and original Personality of Godhead. The demigods are infatuated with the mode of goodness, the Prajapatis with the mode of passion, and the Lord of ghosts with the mode of ignorance. But you are the master of all these qualities. Purport. The word jada diya refers to intelligence like that of an animal. A person with such intelligence cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Without being beaten, an animal cannot understand the purpose of a man. Similarly, those who are dull-minded cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but when punished severely by the modes of material nature, they begin to understand him. A Hindi poet has said, Dukha se saba hari bhaje, sukha se bhaje koi. It's Hindi, not Bengali. Sukha se agar hari bhaje, dukha katan se hoy. Bhaje koi. Sukh se agar hari bhaje, dukh. What's that? When one is distressed, he goes to the church or temple to worship the Lord. But when opulent, he forgets the Lord. Therefore, punishment by the Lord through material nature is necessary in human society. For without it, men forget the supremacy of the Lord due to their dull, blunt intelligence. Welcome to Kali Yuga. It is certified, if you're still here in Kali Yuga, you are dull-minded. It's right in the Bhagavatam. Manda sumanda matayo manda bhagya. Lazy, dull, and unfortunate. So, in many religious systems, they think if you're doing well materially, that's a sign you have God's grace. I prayed to God, I went to church, praised the Lord. I got a letter in the mail, 5,000 euros. Praise the Lord, hallelujah. In the Hare Krišna movement, a devotee says, I got a bill in the mail, 5,000 euros. Praise the Lord. He's taking everything away from me. When Krishna loves you, He takes away. What's the verse? Who knows that verse? When Krishna loves you, He takes it all. It's a sign of His love. I said, my brain's dead. I can't. You know the verse? I can't remember the verse. The word Hare is in the verse because Hare means He takes away. I can't remember. It's like the tip of my tongue. Anyway, when Krishna shows special mercy on the devotee, what's the verse? Shows special mercy on the devotee, He takes everything away. Why can't I think of that verse? When He loves you, He destroys everything. Oh, when the devotee fully surrenders, Krishna will become his servant. Yeah. So, Yad anugranami harishe taddanam shanai. To show mercy on you, I take all your dhanam, your money. Yeah. If you want to be rich, don't join ISKCON. Well, most of us came with no money. It was already taken away before we got here. Anyway, Prabhupada quoted this verse in relation to his own life because his material life at a certain point pretty much was finished. And he took it as Krishna's arrangement. Prabhupada once said that in his astrology, it was predicted he would be one of the richest men in India. He said, by the mercy of my Guru Maharaj, it didn't happen. And then Prabhupada said, my plan was to become wealthy, and then we would use that money for preaching. And he said, that didn't happen. It was not Krishna's desire. Could be for some people, but Krishna had another desire. And so Prabhupada quoted that verse in his own life and said that, like Parikshit Maharaj, by some arrangement he was cursed, but it was a blessing. And so Prabhupada said similarly, my position was similar. But Prabhupada's position is a little different than our position. What Prabhupada is saying in this purport, I'll try to elaborate on it. So, a conditioned soul is in this world to enjoy, to put himself or herself in the center. And the interest that a conditioned soul has in God, generally for most of them, is how God can serve their desire to enjoy. That's basically it, I sometimes say people have religion as an insurance policy. You've committed a sin, go to the church. It's your insurance policy. You won't have to pay for the sin. We've got you covered. Just like you get in an accident, the insurance company pays for it. You commit a sin, the church will pay for it. And later they started charging, 5 euros. Confession, 5 euros. That was a bad sin, pay 10 euros. But that's not the way it's supposed to be done. But, so generally, we want to enjoy, and we think God's purpose in our life is to help us enjoy. That's why God exists. God exists for our enjoyment, right? Like your father exists for your enjoyment, right? So in Christianity, most religions, God is the father because God provides enjoyment for the children. So we see it differently. So Dukkhalayam ashashvatam, this verse that we don't like in Bhagavad Gita, every time you read it, it reminds you the nature of this world is dukkhalayam. And asat, dukkha means misery, and asat means temporary. So, especially for new people, when they come to Krishna consciousness, there's like this idea of God. If God loves you, He gives you things, and God is saying, I've created a world where you suffer. And it doesn't make sense. First you suffer, then you die. Like, what kind of God is that? And in between, you're trying to figure out how to enjoy, but He's made an arrangement where it's not possible, so it never works. I mean, it works temporarily. You can take a vacation, have a good time. But you're still in the material world, still, However nice your hotel is, it's still going to get old and die. So it doesn't seem fair, does it? And it doesn't really fit with the Christian conception of God. God loves you. So sometimes when Prabhupada quotes this verse, dukkhalayam, full of misery, asasvatam, and temporary, he says it this way: Krishna has certified that this world is temporary and full of misery. It's like, here's your certificate. Here's your birth certificate, and here's your other certificate. It's all going to end, and you will suffer in between. You'll have some good times, but you'll definitely have bad times. And you will suffer. That's, you just can't avoid, emotionally or physically. And so naturally, we have to explain this to people. Like, why did God do this? Well, I have a story for you. I believe it was 1981. I went to South Africa. In 1981, I believe South Africa was the third wealthiest country in the world. This was during apartheid. It was not a nice place for the African people, but it was a very nice place for the white people, because they were living by exploiting the black people, cheap labor. And the whole city of Johannesburg is one big gold mine. The city was built on top of a gold mine. And there's a beach there where there are diamonds. It's just all along. I was told, I hadn't been there. There's diamonds all along the beach. But if you try to get the diamonds out of the country, they'll catch you. They'll check. You can't. So, lots of diamonds, lots of gold, lots of cheap labor. So, very, very wealthy country. And every home, maybe not every home, but most homes have what they call servants' quarters. They're little outside your house. There's a little area, and that's where the black people, which they call servants, that's where your servants live. And when I was there in 1981, they were paid about $20 a week. And basically, 8 hours a day, do whatever you ask them to do. Clean, cook, do the laundry, do the gardening. And this one devotee who joined, he was white devotee, and he said his mother never cooked a meal, ever. Never cleaned the house, never did laundry, because it was all done by the African people. And the white people, most of them were very wealthy. In fact, when I went to Johannesburg, I grew up in California, and my home where I grew up was like 1 mile from Beverly Hills. So Beverly Hills was like my backyard. So I know what Beverly Hills looks like. And pretty much 3/4 of Johannesburg looked like Beverly Hills. It was so wealthy. And I think there were more swimming pools in Johannesburg than any city in the world. And a lot of people had come from the UK, and we would see them on Sankirtan. And we would say, how do you like South Africa? every single one would say, it's paradise. That was their line. That's all. Every person said, this is paradise. Lots of money, just opulent in every way. So they invited me to go to South Africa, and they said, but it's very difficult to make white people devotees, and when you make them, they don't stay. And I thought, you must all be in Maya. What's wrong with you? So when I went there, I found out that they were spoiled, that their life was so nice that it was extremely rare that a white person would become a devotee. They were basically spoiled with servants and wealth their whole life. And the schools they went to, the public schools were better than private schools. They were really taken care of. So it was true. When I went there, I think in the whole country there were like 4 white people were devotees, and eventually they all left. Well, we have one in Alachua. He made it. It changed after apartheid, but before apartheid, it was like very rare for them to join, very rare for them to stay. They couldn't do the austerity. They weren't used to it. They didn't know what austerity was. They never had to do it. Their life was too easy. So, story doesn't end there. Then I went to England. Let's see, about 6 months after. No, actually it was a few years later. I went to England. And you know what England's like. When Prabhupada was asked, is there hell? He said, Prabhupada was asked, was hell, is Bhagavad Gita spoken in hell? He said, yes, here we're in England speaking Bhagavad Gita. This is hell. Because of the weather. And one man asked Prabhupada, what is hell like? He said, it's very dark, it's very cold, very foggy. He said, just like England. So, I lived there for like 4 months, and I could certify it was hell. Definitely. And many people were unemployed. And because they were unemployed and it was like hell, lots of people were becoming devotees. And people would come to the temple, and we'd do programs at night, and they'd stay there at 10 o'clock. I'd say, I have to go to sleep. They just want to hear. So I had personal experience of what Prabhupada's saying. I think we all, of course, had personal experience, but I had personal experience through the lives of other people. That it was extremely difficult for people in South Africa, white people. Now, during apartheid, what happened was they did affirmative action, which means that that you have to offer, most of the jobs go to the African people. So it's become difficult for white people to live like they used to live. And so they're living like everybody else. And now lots of white people become devotees. It's completely changed. Because it's kind of not really great for white people. In some ways, it's worse for them, employment-wise. So that's my practical experience of what Prabhupada's saying. So, why did Krishna make the world this way? He didn't have to. Obviously, he could have made it differently. And the answer Prabhupada gives here is because we need it. And if this doesn't happen, we won't become devotees. And I believe, in my meditation on this, I believe if there was any possible way to be happy without God, we would take that path. We wouldn't turn to God because that's just somebody else I have to serve and someone else I have to obey, and I have to give up my own desires. So if I could be happy without doing that, why do I need Him? So we should meditate on that reality. It's a fact. And so Krishna making the world dukkalayam asashvatam, that is the best thing he could have ever done, don't you think? You can complain, oh, my body, my mind, the weather's so bad. But actually, Krishna knew what he was doing. Because if your body didn't hurt, and your mind didn't hurt, and the weather was perfect, and you had tons of money and friends, and everything was great, you would not be sitting here right now in this temple. I would bet all the money I had that that's true. I'm totally convinced beyond any question that that's absolutely true. It was the suffering that pushed us. If there was a way around it and we could have figured out how to avoid it, we wouldn't need to be here. We're not. In other words, our desire to serve Krishna has been completely extinguished by being in the material world. It's just like nothing can activate it. There has to be misery that turns us. Otherwise, what's going to activate a conditioned soul who's come here to enjoy if he's enjoying? What's going to activate him to turn towards God? Suffering. Suffering is when people turn towards God. So, obviously, Krishna knew what he was doing when he created this world. And we just have to accept it's a perfect plan. And if there's suffering, not if, when there's suffering, we can think, well, this is ultimately, I don't like it, but ultimately it's helping me in some way. I remember, I don't know if I told you, but I was in charge of one temple. It was so difficult to run this temple that if I could have just died, that would have been like the biggest happiness and relief of my life. I'm like totally serious. It's like if Krishna came and said, are you ready? And I was like, I was ready when I took this job. That day I was ready. Let's go. It was a particular situation, not an ordinary temple. It was particularly difficult, and I don't particularly like to manage unless I have like the top, best, most qualified Paka Brahmins in the universe. Then I like to manage. Just get everybody more qualified than me, 10 times smarter, 10 times more talented. Then I'll manage. Then it's easy. Because I don't have to do anything, because they know what to do. But this was pretty much the opposite. That even after you tell them what to do, they do the opposite. So I was sitting in my office one day, and I was thinking, this is really difficult. And I'm suffering like anything. And I thought, this is really good. Because I could definitely leave my body in 1 second with no regret right now. Because I would just love to get out of this situation. And a lot of times devotees think, dying must be difficult. I don't know how I could do it. But for most people, your body is broken down. So why would you want to be in a broken down body? Right? It's like at a certain point, you're just going to want to get out of your body. So Krishna arranges it. We all think it's going to be hard. But Krishna arranges it, especially if you live long enough, like nothing works anymore. So just to get up, it hurts. Just to sit down, it hurts. Then you try to eat something, you can't digest it. And everyone's talking to you and you can't hear what they're saying. Huh? What'd you say? You're trying to read something you can't read. Like, why would you want to be in the body? So Krishna actually makes it easy. We think, oh, this is so much suffering, my body's falling apart. And Krishna's saying, no, I'm making it easy for you. Like, why would you want to stay in the body anymore? Of course, if you're not a devotee, you wouldn't understand that, right? Replace this, replace the knee, this hip, this shoulder, that's just the heart, the kidney. Let's keep going, But a devotee can see it in another way. All right, Krishna is showing me. It's breaking down. Okay, it'll be easier to give up. I'm not there yet. My body's not dying, but it's slowly breaking down, and I can't exactly do everything I could, 25 years ago with it, exactly in the same way. So I can see if it continues this way, at some point it's be like, it's just the botheration. Everywhere I go, I have to carry my body with me. That's the problem. It's the botheration. It's like you got to carry, everywhere I go, I got to carry this pain with me. Like, it'd be easier if I could just go without it, right? So we shouldn't think, oh Krishna, why are you causing me suffering? We should think, I probably need it. Sometimes we do something and it's really the wrong thing. And we suffer as a consequence. And we should think, Krishna's just telling me, don't do this, because every time you do this, I'm going to make you suffer because you're dull-headed. And I'm going to keep banging your head. And if you do this 100 times, I will cause you to suffer 100 times. And maybe after 100, you'll figure out I shouldn't do this. That's what Prabhupada's saying here. Dull-headed. And Prabhupada once gave the example. He said, a dog's coming, you want to get the dog away. So in India, maybe not in Western countries, but in India, they'll like throw a stick, throw a rock, beat the dog. They don't have much respect for dogs. I think the dogs are probably carrying rabies and other diseases, so they're like, get away. So he gave that example. He said, but the dog doesn't understand, Get out of here! Throw a shoe at the dog, and the dog comes back. He said, so we're like that, Maya throws a shoe at us, throws a rock in our head, and we just keep coming back. Oh, that was a bad day, I'll do it better tomorrow. Instead of thinking, no, there's a message here that I shouldn't do this. People don't get the message. And I think sometimes we don't get the message. But so any of you had that experience? If you do something, specifically something you're very attached to doing, Krishna always makes it not work out. Just so he's like, hello, I'm not going to let you enjoy this because this is bad for you. If I allow you to do this, you're going to suffer more than I'm causing you to suffer right now. This suffering is actually preventing you from drowning in the ocean, I just slapped you in the face so you wouldn't jump in. But if you jump in, you drowned. That's mercy, right? And if we're smart, we'll see, oh, Krishna, yeah, now I understand why you did that. Because I was about to commit suicide, and you stopped me. So, I like this dull brain. I mean, I don't like having a dull brain, but I like the topic of dull brain, because it's a fact we're dull-brained. We hear something, and what happens? Yes. You understand, Prabhu? Yes. I understand. Then we go out and do the opposite. Why did you do that? Oh, Prabhu, I'm so fallen. I don't know why I did it. I'm so stupid. Yeah. So that's our condition. So Krishna has to, knock us in the head until we stop doing it. That's our unfortunate condition. But if we hear what Krishna says and we do it, he doesn't have to slap us in the face. There's no need, right? Because we did what he said. So there's nothing to prevent us. He's not preventing us from making a mistake if we don't make the mistake. If he gives us instruction, go right, and we go right, then everything's fine. If he gives us an instruction, go right, we go left, he's got to slap us back so we go right. So if you don't want to be slapped, just do what he says. But if you don't, he'll slap you. And you can think, wow, that's amazing. Krishna knows what a dull head I am. And he slapped me. How did Krishna know I was going left when I should go right? Super soul, he knows. That's amazing. Did you ever think like that? Something happens and that was Krishna. He knew I was about to jump and drown myself. And how did he know? And not only how did he know, but why did he even care? And there he is. He knew, he cares, he slaps us, and we know that slap was from Krishna. And we think, and I think, wow, he cares that much to slap me? He didn't just let me drown. That's mercy. Right? That's how we think. We're dull-brained, we need to be slapped. Until we can follow on our own, we'll get slapped every time. And if Krishna slaps us, we can think, what a merciful God. Little me here in the material world, He cares enough about me to slap me when I go off. What mercy is that? And I'm so dull-brained, if I didn't get old within 50, 60, 70 years and didn't have a few aches and pains here, I would think I could enjoy forever. And that's what I would try to do. Right? You agree? Yeah. So there's no way to break that enjoyment tendency. Well, I mean, obviously the way is through bhakti, but there's no way to get us to bhakti if everything's fine. Right? What do I need God for? I've got millions of dollars in the bank. I'm happy. Everything's great. The more countries advance technologically, the more comfortable it gets, the more control people have, and the less they go to God. It's just, you can Google the statistics. So being in a difficult situation, although we don't like it, it's not entirely bad because people tend to be more spiritual. So that's what Prabhupada's saying here. We are dull-brained. We don't get things easily. And that's why Krishna he knows we're dull-brained. That's why He has to create the world like this. Hare Krishna. So, please don't take offense. I was just repeating. I also have a dull brain, and I was just repeating. So when I say we're all dull-brained, I include myself. It's in the Bhagavatam. That's what happens when you're born in Kali Yuga. You have a dull brain. Spiritually dull. Yes, any questions? Yes. You know, what's the example we give? A homeless alcoholic. And he says, I'm happy. Right? That's like dull brain. That's really dull because that's entirely mode of ignorance. So if you live in mode of ignorance, you're really dull. You can't even feel the pain anymore. Yes?
Hare Krishna. I would like to ask regarding this dull brain, because many times, I mean, all the time, I can say for myself, I react automatically. This machinery just, you know, even in conversation. So is this automatically respond part of the dull brain?
Yeah, you could say that. I mean, it's conditioning, but we could say we would have purified our conditioning if we weren't so dull. And part of the dullness is we don't even recognize the conditioning. And so we hear a class to do this, then we do, and then sometimes we do the opposite, and then we don't even know we did the opposite. And sometimes we think we did that when we did that. So that's not dull brain. I don't know what is. Or confused brain. Maybe we have to come up with some new mental illnesses to describe this. You know, we have our own mental illnesses, spiritual mental illnesses. So I could tell you what I've realized about this. Unfortunately, because we're so conditioned, we're going to hear something over and over and over again, and we're going to think we understand it when we actually don't. I mean, maybe we intellectually understand it. But we don't really understand it because we don't act that way. And sometimes you can go for decades thinking you understand something and not even aware that you don't because you're not aware that you're not acting that way. So one of the things that I realized, it may not be the only solution, but one of the solutions that I realized for myself was that when I asked the question, why did it take you 40 years to finally figure out that you didn't understand this? And the answer to myself was because I didn't want it enough. It wasn't that important to me. And for me it was humility. And, you know, humility is not like high on everybody's priority list. You know, what's on your to-do list? Well, the first thing to do today is to become humble. Like, how many people have that on their to-do list? Yeah. So even though I was a devotee, and even though I thought I want to be humble and so on. But practically speaking, it was not something that I was like praying for and desiring. And I met a devotee once who was so humble that from that day on, I wanted to be humble. It was like, it changed me. I was like, it like woke me up. I was like, oh my Govinda, humility. It's all about humility. I need to be humble. I'm not humble. It was like, this is beautiful. Humility. I developed the desire. I'll tell you when that was. That was in 1996. So I've been a devotee, 97 maybe. I've been a devotee 37 years. It took 37 years just to get this little taste. Before that, I'm sure I thought that, I'm humble, I want to be humble. But I actually wanted it. And so, what I found from that point, something happened where that desire became very strong. And I found from that point, I could start to understand humility and practice it. But before that, because I didn't really want it, and I didn't know I didn't want it because I thought I wanted it, but I really didn't. I would say I wasn't really making much progress and much understanding of it. So to break that conditioning, ultimately you have to want to, because the conditioning is on automatic. And it's so subtle that we don't always know we're even doing what we're doing. That's pretty scary, isn't it? I mean, I'm sure in your sober moments you reflect on your life and you think, I shouldn't have said that, or I was so proud to say that. But in the moment, it was like, he deserves that. I just said what he deserves. And then 25 years later you realize, yeah, when I was 20, I was just a little puffed up rascal brat. But I just thought I was a great devotee. I didn't notice it. And now I'm developing some desire to be humble. And I look back at my life and I think, wow, I was so proud. And I couldn't realize it because I didn't really want to be humble. Although I told myself I did, but I really didn't. So I think you could apply that to any quality or anything you're challenged with, because change is difficult. And if you don't have a strong desire to change, how are you going to resist the habit to go back to the way you were? Unless you really, I need to develop these qualities. I need to go in this direction. If that need is really strong, then you can resist the temptation to go back into your habits. But if the need's not strong, why would you resist? It's too hard to resist. It's not worth it. You have to have some value put in. Like, why should I resist this? And if the need is strong enough, you can do it. Because that's going to be better than being lazy and just giving in. So you don't want to do it anymore. So part of what I've seen in Krishna consciousness, just by the practice, as you progress in Krishna consciousness, you start to see in your life that you're developing stronger desires to be something that you didn't desire so much before. You just desired it in your head, but you didn't actually desire it in your heart. So whether it's to be compassionate or kind, or like you were talking last night, maybe to be more conscious of how I'm affecting other people, whatever it is, it's usually some point in your life you wake up and you think, oh, I'm like this and that's not good. I don't want to be like that anymore. And then you develop this desire and then you start improving. And then it's actually quite easy, I find. Because you're kind of sick of that self. And you don't want to be that self anymore. So it's like, it's either this self or that, and that one I don't want. But of course, for 30 years, I liked that self. Or I didn't even know I had that self. Or it didn't bother me. When I got upset with people and told them they're stupid. It didn't bother me. I just thought they need to hear it. But maybe when I get older, I realize, well, that's not really what Vaishnavas do. And I don't want to do that anymore. So now it's easy to change. Does that make sense? That's my personal experience. So as you go on in devotional service, you will find in your life, at some point, a desire to change will be there. And it usually comes from a realization of how much I suffer not being that way. So suffering is, it's our friend. It is. That's, I suffer. Like I am proud, and at some point I will realize how much I'm suffering from being proud. And humility is better. I'm suffering from being resentful. If I didn't suffer from being resentful, I'd probably just continue. I'll use it as a weapon, protect myself. So that suffering is, And another thing, of course, the word disease, right? Disease means not at ease. So resentment's a disease because it makes you uneasy. And pride is a disease because it makes you uneasy. So these are all diseases. And at some point we will want to get rid of those diseases because they cause suffering. Dis-ease. And I pray that it all happens to you sooner than later. I pray you don't have to wait 37 years to start thinking about humility. You want to hear something funny? So I saw this sadhu, and he was very humble. And this isn't funny, but I'll tell you the funny part. I was recently in Vrindavan, and I saw a sadhu. He was like the sadhu of Varshana. And so I was introduced to him, and the devotee introduced him, knew him, and I forgot his name. What's that sadhu's name? Vinod Bihari Baba. And so, something like that. And so, So this devotee said, this is Mahatma Prabhu, and he's a disciple of Prabhupada, and he travels to different countries. And, he chants. I was told he starts chanting at 3 a.m. and just sits straight till 3 p.m. something. And then I guess he comes back to reality and takes prasadam or something. And you know what he said? He said one thing to me. He said, "Please bless me." I was like, oh my God. And just like, you can't get that from reading a book. You should be humble. You can't get that transformation. So sometimes in our devotional life, from practicing Krishna consciousness, our heart's getting softer, softer, softer. And one day, one class, one person, one exchange, one sadhu, something hits. You're like, oh, I want to let this resentment go. This is, I actually desire to be humble. Whereas I never really desired it because I thought, we think, if I'm humble, then I'm down, I'm last in line. Isn't it? People take advantage. And I'm an ISKCON, I'm upward mobile. I want to be the leader in 10 years, in charge of this and that. If I'm humble, I'll always be washing the pots. So we have these ideas, right? So what happened is really interesting. This is probably a psychological phenomena. I'm sure it is. I don't know the name of it. Maybe it's cognitive dissonance. So anyway, I thought, when I saw this first sadhu, not recently, but when I saw this first sadhu, something happened, something just came over me. And I thought, humility is the essence. This is it. And then the next thought was a really weird thought. And I didn't know it was a weird thought. And I was thinking, humility is so important. Why didn't Prabhupada talk about it more? He should have talked about it more. It's so important. Here comes the funny part. So I went to the database, and you go to the database, you put in the word humility, and you'll see how many times it comes up. It was like 5 million times, No, nothing comes up, but it was like, thousands and thousands of times. And I realized, and this is really important for all of us, I realized because I didn't want to become humble, I didn't notice it. And something else that happens, and it's really funny, but it's true. Something else that happens, I think it came up last night actually. No, it came up yesterday when Chandramauli Swami was saying that Radhanath Swami told each person, the husband you should serve the wife you should serve the husband, and all they heard was the wife heard the husband should serve her, husband heard that. Like that's what the mind does. It selects out things that you don't want to hear. And this is funny, but it's true. So when a man reads any chapter in the Bhagavatam where it's talking about grihastha life and man and woman and how the men should act and how the women should act, even though the Bhagavatam is describing how the men will act, after they read the chapter, they only remember what it said about the woman because they want their wife to act that way. And you say, well, didn't you read the parts about how the men should act? They go, what part? It didn't say anything. But if you go back, there's all these things about men. But the man doesn't see it because he's tuned it out. And I'm not saying only men, the women also. So this one man was giving a marriage workshop, and it was hilarious. It was so funny. So he said, now, this section of the workshop, we're going to talk about what the men should do to be good husbands. And he said, and all the wives are going like this, listen, right? And then now we're going to talk about what the women, and the men are going, listen. So this is just, I don't think it's a fault of any one individual. I think it's the nature of psychology that you tune out what you don't want to hear. And you don't even know it's there. At least that was my experience. So I think it's it's something we can all meditate on. If we don't want it, we don't even notice it. Or we notice it and we think we understand it. And there's another big, I don't know what you would call it, but when you understand something intellectually, you shouldn't think you understand it. You can think, I understand it intellectually, but until you're practicing it, you can't really say you understand it. And so often, at least in my life, I thought I understood something only because I understood the concept. So if you want to teach a class on humility, just go through Prabhupada's books, Google, go to Vedabase Humility, get all the quotes, read them, and you can explain it. You can explain the whole concept. If you're, smart, a good teacher, you could explain it all. It doesn't mean anything wore off on you at all. It just means you've understood. You've analyzed it. You completely, this is what humility means. And at the end of the class, people are going, wow, that was a great class, and you become proud. I'm so proud of the class I gave on humility. It was the best class, I think, in ISKCON that any devotees have ever heard. At least that's what they're telling me, Like that, right? Could that happen? Of course it could happen. So this is an important thing for us to ask ourselves, okay, I understand it theoretically, but do I actually understand it? Do I feel it? And do I act it? So this is just part of what it means to become Krishna conscious. You're going to understand it first in your head, and you could often make the mistake that you think you understand it, when it's just conceptual, right? That's just my experience, and so, as probably most of you notice, I focus on practical application in my class because of this, because it's easy not to. It's easy to just get the theory and not take it and put it into my life. And it's easy not to notice that I'm not doing it in my life. That's kind of dangerous. If you think you know it and you're not doing it, then how are you ever going to do it? And someone may even tell you, you should be more humble. What do you mean? I understand humility. So, those are my two realizations in relation to your question. I guess it's cognitive dissonance. You think you're doing one thing, you think you're doing it, but you're not. One devotee who's I guess you could say she's a psychologist, she's a coach, a counselor. She told me there's a psychological phenomena that if you think about yourself in a certain way, and you act the opposite way of the way you think about yourself, you won't notice you're acting the opposite way, because you will always see all your actions in terms of how you think about yourself. So let's say I think I'm a nice person. I'm kind, loving, and nice. If I'm not kind, loving, and nice, I don't notice it, because I only notice that I'm kind, loving, and nice. You notice that I'm not kind, loving, and nice because you don't know how I'm feeling. You only know what you see me doing. Right? Isn't that interesting? Can you relate to that? Like you can actually do the opposite of what you want to be because you feel you are this kind of person, and this kind of person wouldn't do that, and so you don't realize you're doing it. That's pretty scary, actually, if you think about it. And that's why sometimes you'll say, Prabhu, you shouldn't do this, and the devotee will say, I never do that. And you're like, you always do that. No, I don't, I never do that. Because they don't see themselves as a person who would do that. So they don't notice it when they do it. Hare Krishna. So if you ever get married, or you are married, and your husband or wife says you always do this, your first reaction is going to be, I never do that. Don't say that, because your husband or wife is going to want to like chop your head off when you say that, because it's like to them it's so obvious that you do it. And just say, really? I do that? I didn't know. And say, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. It's a really interesting phenomenon. Isn't it? Don't you think it's interesting? Yeah. Yeah, I live in a little bottle, a little illusory universe. It's kind of scary, actually. Like, someone doesn't like me. How could you not like me? I'm the nicest guy in the world. There must be something wrong with you. And you don't realize, well, you know, yesterday you told that person doesn't like you that they're a stupid idiot and they should go to hell. But you didn't realize you said that, because a nice guy wouldn't say that, but you actually said it. And while you're saying it, you don't even realize you're saying it. That is scary, isn't it? And someone said we don't need psychology, right? No, that's why I don't believe it. Because this is really important to understand. You have to understand yourself, and you have to understand yourself, you have to understand how your mind works, how you lie to yourself, and so many things, you know. Otherwise, you just... We could think we're humble and we're very proud, and that's dangerous, because humility is like everything, right? Hare Krishna. Anything else? Yes.
So, I don't know if this right frame right now. If not, then please tell me. But just like a sub-question to what were you saying.
Okay.
Maybe I would just like to hear right now if you could maybe just in a essence, the duties of a woman, the duties of a man. Something that would be really interesting and relevant for men to hear, and also for the woman, in the length that you like.
I think we touched on it yesterday. Well, I can tell you the duty of a man from my wife's perspective, because she tells me. And this is going to be funny for you. This is really be funny. But women like it when men clean the house and wash the dishes. It's like to them, that's what a man does. Like if you're a man, you'll wash the dishes. Women expect men to do difficult things, like things which are heavily ridden with anxiety, or things which are complicated for them. It might be simple things, but for them, I'm not saying all women, but you know, specifically your wife might find something complicated maybe like paying bills or something. So you're the man, you should do this. You're like, obviously if the car is not running, most men know more about cars. They expect you to do the man things, So what women don't like is when the man become a little bit too much like a woman. Being a little bit like a woman is fine. It's good, actually. More sensitive, You won't dress like a slob. You'll, be clean and neat. So that's good. But if it's too much, when the difficult things come, you say, you do it. You're the man. You do it. You do the tough stuff. So that's, and they want to feel like they don't have to worry because you'll take care of it. So, I think one of the easiest ways to answer this question is just learn what it means to be a man. Because a woman wants to marry a man, just like you want to marry a woman, right? You don't want your wife to be like a man, because then it's like, why do you need a wife who's like a man? You have enough friends already, right? So that's just my experience. Like a man wants actually a woman for a wife, and a wife actually wants a man. And there's cross areas, gray areas, because we all have male and female in us. So a man doesn't always want his wife just to be like so feminine she can't do anything, and you have to do everything, I can't do it. No, not like that. And like I said, and a woman likes feminine qualities in a man as long as they don't dominate, and he's just like, I can't fix the car, you fix it. Like my wife, she hates to put gas in the car, or petrol, she hates it. So like when we go out, she's like, yeah, I feel so good when you put gas in the car. I'm like, whatever. That's just, I don't know. I don't argue with it. I just go, okay, that's what men do. They put gas in the car. Or they do the man things. So rather than just have like a list of duties, I think it's better, it's just like what makes your wife happy, and she thinks what makes you happy. And that's just what you do. And it's usually going to be male things and female things, mostly. And so, my wife used to tell me, like what she would say, it makes me so happy if you fix something that's broken in the house. I'm like, okay. If it's that easy to make your wife happy, get out the screwdriver and, screw something back in, Because she doesn't know how to do it, or she's not good at it, or she doesn't like to do it. So it's like you don't try to figure it out. It's just like, okay, that makes you happy. I'll do it, And then I'll fix something. I'm not good at fixing things, but, some things I can do. And every once in a while she says, you could never fix that. And I'm like, that's the thing I'm going to fix. So I fix it, and she's like, oh my God, I never thought you could fix it. And she's like, so it's like, deposits, you get. It's funny. I'll tell you something really funny. The people who have analyzed male-female relationships say that, but it's true of any relationship. Every time you do something positive, it's like putting money in the bank account. Every time you do something negative, it's like taking out. So the relationship gets worse with every fight, with every criticism, and it gets better with every appreciation or thing you do to satisfy the partner. And they say that for every negative, you have to do 5 positive to get to 0. Because the negative it hurts the relationship so much, you'll have to do 5 things to get it to 0. And so what men think is, well, if I do one thing that's really good, it'll be as good as 5 things, right? But it doesn't work that way. So if you want to buy your wife a dozen roses, I suggest buy 1 a day, because then you're doing 12 things. But if you get 12 roses, you don't get 12 points, you get 1 point. But if you bring 1 rose a day, you get 12 points. Even if you buy her a Mercedes-Benz, and you think, okay, that should be worth 1,000,000 points, it's 1 point, it's one thing. Maybe you get 5 points for that. But it's not as many points as you think you're going to get. Yes?
But who is guarantee you that you will get 100 points? I mean, you can give, yes.
He's saying, Well,
Hare
I'm not
Krishna.
guaranteed that she'll like what I do.
Yeah, no, it's like you said this example now,
Mhm.
and in this example you like guarantee
No,
that you will
no,
get 20 times more credits.
no,
But
you won't.
there is no guarantee.
No,
I
I
mean,
didn't say that. I said you won't get it. You only get, you'll do 20. You'll spend 20 times more money, but you only get 1 point, because it's one act.
But how can you guarantee that you will get 20 points with giving 20 roses?
Oh,
Because
yeah.
then, like,
Well, as long as she likes roses and they're the right color. If she doesn't like roses and they're the wrong color, you'll get minus 20 points.
yeah, because what I see, like today example, and most of the examples on the lectures of Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita is that there is not line between criteria of objectivity and subjectivity.
Yeah.
Like Prabhupada is all the time, if I understand correctly, saying things objectively. But here, when we have then commentaries on commentaries, like lectures, we are all the time very subjective, because some of the things should be like
Those are
objective.
details.
Yeah,
Those are
because
details.
what happens, what is my experience here is when you say like this temple room is not clean, then it will be like, Prabhu, you're criticizing, come on. And if you say this to the one who is in charge, it's like, what's wrong with you? You're so critical, you know. So how to put also this criteria in devotional life? What's objective and what is like subjective?
Well, it's hard not to be subjective because we're all individuals, right? Well, what I would, I'll give a kind of, take it maybe to another level. We want to please devotees, right? So let's say you look at the temple and by your standard it's not clean, right? And I'm the temple president and my standard it's too clean. It doesn't have to be that clean. We took too much time. And you know that. And you know we have different standards, right? And so you have to think, okay, if I tell Mahatma Prabhu the temple is not clean, maybe he'll feel offended, you know. So I'm just going to clean it where I think it, I don't think it's clean because there's dust on all the frames, right? So I'll just clean it and then I'll keep the relationship.
Yes, and what happened to me personally is like this, that then you're clean one day and they make a mess for another day. You clean next day, then everything looks like that you're not
you're going to clean it up. Yeah.
No, then it looks like that you're not anymore a servant, but like their slave. And then what they take advantage because they say like, yes, of course,
that's true.
Akshaya Prabhu will clean at the end, you know.
Shaya Prabhu.
Yeah, but like Prabhupada said, like cleanliness is next to godliness.
Yeah.
And then you have like a Brahmana initiation devotees who are like having a little bit lower standard of cleanliness. How to comment this kind of thing? They don't want to see?
Yeah.
Or
Well, I'll give you a very Krishna conscious answer to the first point. You are very fortunate that devotees are letting you do all that service. That's one way of thinking. The question, I think the question you're asking is actually more of a managerial question. And in situations like this, where, it could be anything, not just cleaning, it could be anything. We all have subjective standards. So I do something and I think it's fine, and 10 other people think, you've just offended everybody. So there have to be definitions and boundaries, like what is the standard for cleanliness that we can all agree on? And so then when we say it's not clean, it's an agreed standard. It's not subjective. That I find this, it's very common in Facebook groups. Someone says something that offends others. Was it offensive or not? Well, we have to establish a standard. What's allowable in that group? Maybe it is offensive, but until we establish it, who can say if it's offensive or not? Until we all agree, we will only say these things and not these things. I think that's the easiest way. Otherwise, you just argue because you have different standards. Does that help? Because you want to do something so there's not friction between devotees. So if you can create policies that would prevent friction, that's good.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense what you were saying. Yeah. The only thing is like that they say that history is repeating. So from the first day of this temple, I think the story is repeating all the time, and that's why we have such a much fluctuation of like devotees coming and going out. Because at the end, what I got instruction from the senior devotees is like, Prabhu, don't get so much into it. You just take what you want from them. Like get initiation. Then go with your life, spiritual, and don't bother, You just come here for like...
Till you get initiated?
Before you initiate, you have to do everything. You have to be quiet.
Now that Ananta knows that,
after
no one's going to get initiated now, because everyone will stay. It'd say, Ananta, 7 years for initiation, if you're lucky. If you're lucky.
Yeah, I think that initiation you get by if they need you, if they need more Brahminical initiation, you got the Brahminical initiation.
There's a lot of problems, and they obviously need to be discussed, because anything that doesn't get discussed, for any organization, religious or otherwise, things tend to be the same if things kind of more or less go on. I heard someone say that businesses are the most flexible, because if the economy changes or trends change, the business to survive, it has to change with it. Otherwise, you can't sell typewriters anymore. So when computers came out, then IBM was the typing company. Then it went into computers. So that's what businesses have to do. It's easy for... He said, but non-profit organizations, they have principles, and it's harder for them to change. And he said, but religious organizations, they're the organizations that have the most difficult time changing, because there's fear that we're breaking principles, and it's common. It's a joke, and I think it's true in ISKCON also, but I read this. It's common when you ask religious institutions why you're doing something. In other words, you're asking why you're doing this because it doesn't seem to be productive or useful. And they say generally in religious organizations, the answer is because we've always done it that way. So these conversations are healthy, and say, okay, we've always done it this way because in 1990 it worked, but it doesn't seem to be working now. What's the principle we have to keep, and how do we change the details so it can make things can work better? I think those are necessary discussions. If it's done, politely, respectfully, and with a desire to not change anything that's foundational, but just to work around the problems and solve them. What do you think? That's not going to work?
I think that everybody is more smart than me, so I have to listen to them, and if I don't agree, I should go away.
No, of course not. These things should be discussed amongst devotees. Maybe a lot of devotees agree with you. Maybe a lot of devotees don't. Then we discuss. There's even if some devotee doesn't agree with you, I'm sure you'll see something in what he's saying that's valuable, and I'm sure if he listens to you, he'll see something valuable in what you're saying, although he may not agree entirely. And that way we discuss. If we can't do that, we stagnate. And if there are problems, we're not being critical to point them out. We're pointing them out because we want to solve them. The thing we have to be careful of is when you see a problem, usually the problem is related to a person who's creating the problem, right? This is dirty. Well, that's because the person who was supposed to clean it didn't clean it, or didn't do it well, or there's mismanagement and they're not getting enough people to clean. So ultimately, it's going back to a person. So the problem that comes up that I see, and it really concerns me, is that if there is a problem, that's okay. There will be problems. And it's not a problem to talk about the problem. It's a problem when in talking about the program, we start to deviate from Vaishnava behavior. And we get very critical of the person. We don't respectfully deal with it. That's when we have the problem. Then it creates friction. So if I can say, he did something, and we say, we just want to correct this. Can we help you? Do you need help? Or did you not know? We just want to, the temple room's not clean and we want to get it cleaner. Do you need help? Like, what can we do to help you? This is what professional companies do. Like the most successful companies. If someone is not performing well, the first thing they do is say, we see your performance is not what we need it to be, or it's not what it was last year. Is anything wrong? Is there anything we can do to help you? Is there anything you don't know? You're not feeling well? You have problems at home? That's the way they approach it. They don't smash them. So if they're doing that outside of ISKCON, at least we should be that good, right? So let's, what's the problem? Let's talk about it.
Because one of the answers at the end is also the most important thing is that things are done and Krishna will accept everything. But my Gurudev say, like, we don't know if Panchatattva accept everything.
No.
We are sure that Panchatattva is tolerating everything.
Yeah.
So we are putting like thorny garlands, etc., these kind of things.
Okay, yeah. No, I accept that. It's a valid point. So then the question is, how can we raise the standard without offending anyone and not creating friction amongst the devotees? That's to see what needs to be done is a lot easier than keeping good relationships and communicating to people who are responsible for that, how to improve it without them feeling you're envious, without them feeling you're criticizing them. But see, the thing is also, let's say you and I, we have a really good relationship. So if you come to me and say, it would be better if you did it this way, the kirtan this way, the class this way, I'm not going to react because I know we're friends and I know you're not criticizing me and I know you're just trying to help me. So really that's fundamental to creating discussion, to know that we're not trying to put anyone down, and we appreciate and we respect everyone. And if we can feel that from another devotee, then it's easy to discuss. But if we don't feel that, we'll just, right? Who are you to tell me? So relationships are important. Good relationships. Without those, we're going to have trouble trying to improve things because people will take offense. You have that experience?
I have this experience. The first time they were all smiling to me, they were very nice there. Then I spotlight some of the things. Now they are like afraid of me, they're saying bad things about me, etc. So
yeah, well, you also have to learn how to, maybe you have to learn better how to present it, so that they feel you're not trying to criticize or put them down.
Yes.
Like, if I'm not doing something well, and I know someone who cares about me, tells me, it's very positive. Oh, thank you for telling me, I didn't know that. And they'll say, well, I'll help you improve it. Wow, that's wonderful. So done in the right way, it can be taken positively, right? Hopefully. Okay, so I have a meeting at 10.
Hare Krishna, thank you.
And I should probably take prasadam, right? Yeah. Anyway, this discussion, you'll have to carry on after I go and, amongst yourselves and, just be Vaishnava. My main point is there is Vaishnava etiquette, and so there's a system through which if we don't like something, we can deal with it so we remain respectful and loving. And if we transgress that, then it's better not talk about the problem, because in trying to solve the problem, we'll just ruin a relationship. And that's probably worse than the problem. Because sometimes in trying to solve a problem, you make a bigger problem. It's possible. Isn't it? Yeah.
It is like this. But you don't want to have a relationship with one who is making you problems, or
yeah, exactly.
or who doesn't have a standards like yours or something like this.
But by having a relationship, then you can communicate why those standards are. important to you, and they can understand. Okay.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.